was once a fisherman who lived with his wife in a bare and miserable hut by the sea. And every day the fisherman went out and fished. And he fished, and he fished, and he fished. One day he sat there fishing and staring down into the clear water. Then, all of a sudden, down went the hook, deep down. And when he pulled it up, there on his hook was a huge fish. The fish spoke to him and said, "Fisherman, I beg you, spare my life. I am not a real fish. I am a prince under a spell. I would not taste good. Put me back into the water and let me swim." "Well," said the man, "a fish that can talk? I want nothing to do with that." And he threw the fish back into the clear water, and it quickly swam away down to the bottom of the sea. Then the fisherman got up and went home to his wife. "Well, haven't you caught anything today?" "I did catch a fish. But it said it was not a fish at all, but a prince under a spell, so I let it go." "But didn't you ask for anything?" "No. What should I have asked for?" "Well, here we live in this miserable hut. You could have asked for a proper little cottage. Go and tell the fish we want a proper cottage." The fisherman did not want to go, but his wife gave him no peace. So he went off to the sea. When he got there, the water was all yellow and not so clear anymore. The fisherman stood on the shore and said, "Manya, Manya, Timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsebel, my willful wife, does not want my way of life." And the fish appeared and said, "What does she want then?" "She says that when I caught you this morning, I ought to have asked you for something. She wants a little cottage." "Go home," said the fish. "She has her wish already." So the man went home. And there he found a pleasant little cottage with his wife standing in the yard. "Come in and see," she cried. "Isn't this better than the old hut?" They went inside the cottage, which had several nice-sized rooms. There were tables and benches, pots and pans, and everything that the man and his wife would need. And outside you could see a small garden and hear cackling hens and quacking ducks. "Look," said the wife, "isn't it all just right?" "Yes," said the fisherman. "How happily we shall live in our little cottage." "Well, we'll try," said the wife. And then they went to bed. After a few weeks passed, the fisherman's wife said, "Look here, this cottage is much too small, and the courtyard and the garden are so tiny. The fish might really have given us a bigger house. I want to live in a fine stone mansion. Go to the fish and tell it to give us a mansion." "My dear wife," said the fisherman, "the cottage is good enough. Why should we live in a mansion?" "Listen to me," said the wife. "Go along now. The fish will surely give it to you." "No, wife," said the man. "The fish has already given us this cottage. I don't want to go there again. It might displease the fish." "You go now," said the wife. "The fish will be willing to give us a mansion. Just you go." The fisherman's heart was heavy, and he still didn't want to go. He said to himself, "It is not right." But he went anyway. When he came to the sea, the water was gray and thick, but still quiet. He stood on the shore and said, "Manya, manya, timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsabel, my willful wife, does not want my way of life." Well, what does she want now? She wants to live in a stone mansion. "Go home then," said the fish. When the fisherman came back to where his cottage had been, he found a great stone mansion. Inside there were marble floors, the walls were all bright, and the rooms were full of golden chairs and tables. Behind the mansion there was a park at least half a mile long. "See," said the wife, "isn't it beautiful?" "Oh yes, now we can live here and be satisfied for the rest of our lives." "We will think that over," said the wife. "And now, let's go to bed." The next morning, the wife woke up first. It was daylight, and from her bed she looked out at the wonderful land lying before her. And she thought, "Shouldn't we be king and queen of this land?" The fisherman was still asleep, so she gave him a shove and said, "Go to the fish. We want to be king." "Oh no," said the fisherman. "Why should we want to be king? I don't want to be king." "If you don't, I mean to be king. Go to the fish." So the fisherman got up, but he was dismayed that his wife wanted to be king. "It is not right. No, it is not right," the fisherman thought. He didn't want to go, but in the end he went. And when he came down to the sea, the water looked blackish and orange and was no longer quiet. Once more he stood on the shore and said, "Manya, manya, timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsabel, my willful wife, does not want my way of life." "Well, what does she want now?" asked the fish. "Alas," said the fisherman, "she wants to be king." "Go home," said the fish. "She already is." When the fisherman came home, he saw that the mansion had been turned into a huge castle built of marble and gold. And there was his wife on a high throne, with a golden crown on her head and a scepter made of gold and jewels in her hand. He went to her and said, "O wife, are you now king?" "Yes," said the wife, "now I am king." He stood there looking at her, and when he had looked at her for a while, he said, "My dear, I do believe you are quite suited to be king. Now we have nothing more to wish for." "Oh, but there is not enough to do. Go to the fish. King is not enough. I want to be emperor." "Oh, wife," said the fisherman, "I can't say that to the fish." "What?" said the wife. "I am king, and you are just my husband. Go, right now." If the fish can make a king, it can make an emperor too. I want to be emperor. Go and hurry. So he had to go. But this time he became really afraid. And on his way he said to himself, this isn't right. This isn't right. Emperor is too much to ask for. The fish will tire of this in the end. When the fisherman came to the sea, the water looked darker and muddier, and the wind howled, and heavy waves broke on the shore. Fearfully he stood by the water and said, Manya, Manya, Timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsabil, my willful wife, does not want my way of life. Well, what does she want then? Asked the fish. My wife wants to be emperor. Go home, said the fish. She already is. When the fisherman came home, there was a palace made of polished marble and alabaster, with pinnacles and towers and golden decorations. And drums were beating and trumpets were sounding. And inside, barons and earls walked around as servants, opening the doors. And his wife sat on a magnificent throne. On her head she wore a large crown adorned with sapphires and rubies. And in her hand she held the scepter. The fisherman went up to her and said, Wife, are you emperor now? Yes, she said, I am emperor, but now I want to become pope. Go to the fish. Wife, will nothing ever satisfy you? Husband, she said, go now. I want to be pope. I must become pope this very day. No, wife, said the fisherman. I cannot tell that to the fish. You go too far. Nonsense, said the wife. If it can make an emperor, it can make a pope. Get along. I am emperor, and you are just my husband. Be off. At that, he was very much afraid. So he went. But he was weak with fear, and shuddered and shook at the knees. And a hard storm blew over the land, and the sea boiled and roared. Frightened and hesitant, the fisherman stood by the water and said, Manya, Manya, Timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsabil, my willful wife, does not want my way of life. Well, what does she want? Ah, said the fisherman, she wants to be pope. Go home. She already is. So he went. When he came home, there was a large church with palaces all around it. His wife wore 3 golden crowns on her head and was high above all other people. Wife, said the fisherman, and looked at her very hard and long, are you now Pope? Yes, she said, I am now Pope. It really suits you to be Pope. Now, be content. because when you are Pope, there is nothing more to become. That I will think over, said his wife. And with that, they went to bed. The fisherman slept deeply and heavily, because he'd been running much that day. But his wife could not sleep, and sat and wondered if she could not rise even higher. And as morning came, she thought, I could make the sun and moon rise. And she woke her husband and said, go to the fish. I want to be like God. The fisherman was still half asleep, but he was so alarmed that he fell out of bed. What did you say, wife? He said. Husband, she said, I will never have a peaceful moment. Go immediately. I want to be like God. But wife, begged the man, be content and stay Pope. At that she became furious and screamed, I can't stand it. I can't stand it any longer. Off you go. And the fisherman jumped into his trousers and ran away as if he had lost his senses. Outside, there was such a violent storm that he could not stay on his feet. Houses caved in and trees were uprooted. The mountains trembled and great boulders rolled down into the sea. The sky was filled with lightning. The sea crashed and roared, and the waves were as high as church towers and mountains. So he screamed out, and he could hardly hear his own words. Manya, Manya, Timpati, fishy, fishy in the sea. Ilsebil, my willful wife, does not want my way of life. Well, what does she want? She wants to be like God. Go home. She is sitting in that miserable hut. And there she sits to this day.